They struck a human child, and 10 minutes later, their warlord's head was hanging in the council chamber. I did not witness the moment the head was hung. I arrived 3 minutes after, but the echoes were still in the air when I stepped through the shattered archway. Not the echoes of violence, those were already fading, but the echo of something stranger, colder. A silence that clung to the walls like oil. A silence so heavy the guards at the entrance refused to cross the threshold. Even they understood something ancient had just happened here, something that did not belong in this century, or any century built on treaties and protocols. But let me take you back, because this story doesn't begin with a decapitated warlord or a terrified council chamber. It begins with a marketplace. The Joraen Exchange Spire wasn't a battlefield. It wasn't even a military post. It was a floating bazaar tethered to the upper atmosphere of a gas giant, glowing like a lantern against endless storms. You could hear the whole structure breathing, pressure pumps humming, magnetic stabilizers singing through the metal, vendors shouting in 12 languages. It was a place for food, crafts, and trade. The kind of place where species came to get lost, buy sweets, or watch acrobats twirl above gravity wells. Not the kind of place where someone expects to die. Certainly not the kind of place where someone expects a child to be attacked. I was on assignment that day. Diplomatic customs audit. Nothing dramatic, my species, the Nhalori, are administrative by nature. We count crates, scan manifests, and write reports that will be archived until a scandal demands someone read them. I had just finished submitting a structural compliance note when I heard the scream. High-pitched, human, and cut short far too abruptly. Every species reacts differently to danger. My antennae snapped rigid before I consciously turned. Others froze or hissed. But the atmosphere itself carried the truth. Something was very wrong. At first, all I saw was a crowd cocooning around a point near the center walkway. Then the crowd parted, not from compassion but fear, and I saw her. A human girl. 7? Maybe 8. Curly hair, small backpack shaped like an animal from their homeworld. One of the straps had been torn off, dangling like a broken limb. And she was on the ground. Not stumbling. Not dizzy. Down. Her hands were trying to push herself up but kept slipping. Her breath hitching, sharp and wet. And just above her, towering with the arrogant stillness of a creature that enjoyed causing pain, was a Kothai mercenary. Broad-shouldered. Blue chitin plates lacquered for intimidation. His shock baton was still humming with residual energy. Someone had struck her, and struck her hard. His voice rolled across the walkway. She reached for my blade. I disciplined her. Disciplined. That was the word he used. The crowd murmured but none stepped closer. Kothai mercenaries had a reputation, one built on brutality, not restraint. The girl's fingers curled weakly toward her chest. She wasn't crying anymore. Humans cry loudly when frightened. When they cry silently, it means something deeper has broken. I moved without thinking. Not to confront him, I'm not a fighter. I went to the child. Protocol be damned. She looked up when I knelt next to her, one eye already swelling shut. Hurts? She whispered. I know, I whispered back. Stay still. The Kothai scoffed. Soft little creature. They act like offspring are worth something. I turned to him slowly. You attacked a minor inside a neutral market jurisdiction. That is a criminal offense. He stepped forward, and I felt his shadow swallow me. Speak again, auditor, and you'll join her. That's when the atmosphere changed. I didn't see the father arrive. No one did. One moment the air was trembling from the Kothai's threat. The next moment every hair on my arms rose. It was not a sound. It was not a vibration. It was an absence. A void forming between one heartbeat and the next. Then a hand touched my shoulder, gently, and I looked up into a human face marked by something I'll never forget. Not rage. Not panic. Stillness. The kind of stillness predators use before killing. His name, I learned later, was Aric Hale. Civilian. Engineer. Married. One child. Average by human definitions. Nothing in his record explained the way the crowd instinctively backed away from him. Aric went to his knees beside the girl, and she tried to lift her hand toward him before another wave of pain pulled a whimper from her throat. "Dad? I didn't touch anything." His voice was soft enough that the hum of the stabilizers nearly drowned it. "You don't have to talk, little star. I'm right here." He checked her breathing, her pulse, her eyes. Every motion was controlled. Steady. Calculated. Then he stood. And everything within 10 meters stepped back. The Kothai mercenary grinned. He thought Aric's stillness meant weakness. "Your spawn touched my gear. I taught her not to." Aric tilted his head slightly, not confusion, not disbelief. "Assessment. You struck my child with a military shock weapon," Aric said quietly. "She weighs 21 kilos. Your baton is calibrated for fully armored adults." "So?" the Kothai spat. "You could have stopped her hand. You chose to break her body." There was no shout. No escalation. Just a sentence spoken like a time of death on a medical report. The Kothai stepped forward. "What will you do, human? Cry?" Aric's eyes shifted, barely. A tightening at the corners. Emotional spike. And then a reversal I still cannot logically explain. Aric vanished. Not disappeared into thin air, no. My species perceives micro-movements faster than most. What I saw was motion so compressed, so efficient, it blurred into a single line of intent. He didn't run. He didn't leap. He moved through space like it had offered him the shortest route between anger and consequence. The Kothai tried to swing. He never finished the motion. Aric's hand closed around the mercenary's wrist, bended backward with a single smooth arc, and the shock baton clattered against the floor. Before the Kothai could roar, Aric struck once, a precise, upward strike beneath the sternum. The mercenary collapsed, choking on blood and disbelief. The crowd screamed. Not because a Kothai mercenary had fallen, they expected that someday. But because a human had done it silently. The station alarms triggered instantly. Security drones flooded the walkway. Voices barked through comms. "Kothai Warlord approaching! Clear all paths! Clear all paths!" The Warlord. Joraen Exchange. The butcher of Voral's Rim. 6 scars across his mandibles from battles he bragged about endlessly. I had written reports about him, none of them pleasant. He arrived with 30 soldiers and a confidence that filled the air like smoke. He didn't look at the girl. He didn't look at me. He didn't even look at his fallen mercenary. His eyes locked on Aric. "You attack my warrior in my market," Joraen growled. Aric didn't flinch. "You authorized weapons that nearly killed my daughter." The Warlord laughed, a harsh, grinding sound. "She interfered with my soldier." He corrected her. "If that offends you." Aric spoke over him. "You have 9 minutes." The entire walkway froze. Joraen's laugh died mid-breath. 9 minutes for what, soft skin? For your last words. Shock spike. Micro cliffhanger. The soldiers around Joraen shifted uneasily. Humans weren't supposed to sound like that. Not civilians. Not engineers. I checked the girl, she was conscious but fading. Internal trauma. She needed medical care immediately. But Aric wasn't moving. Not an inch. Joraen raised one arm, signaling his troops. "Kill him!" And then, lighting failed. The walkway plunged into flickering twilight. A sound rolled through the chamber, not metal, not machinery. Footsteps. Dozens of them. Human footsteps. Every adult human in that marketplace was advancing. Not shouting. Not threatening. Moving with the same horrifying stillness Aric possessed. And for the first time in my career, I saw a warlord afraid. Words formed at Aric's lips. "You touched one of ours." Reversal hit. And the countdown began. The Kothai warlord tried to bark another order, but the sound tangled in his throat as the humans fanned out across the walkway. There weren't many of them, maybe 12 in total, scattered families, technicians, a merchant couple, a linguist with a crate of scrolls. Some held children. Some carried nothing at all. But every one of them wore the same expression. Stillness. Unified, unspoken, unbroken. The marketplace shifted around them like it was recoiling. Species that had survived invasions, plagues, and border wars backed against pillars and stalls, whispering in languages that trembled. Drak tried to salvage his pride. You think a handful of humans frighten me? I command 1,000 soldiers on this station. Aric didn't bother replying. He stepped forward once, and every human mirrored the motion. Perfect synchrony. As if they shared one breath. I realized then what made them terrifying. Humans didn't need weapons. The weapon was the space between their heartbeats. Drak snarled, mandibles flaring. Enough! Finish him! His soldiers leapt. But Aric was already gone. For the second time that day, he moved faster than instinct, faster than fear, faster than the Warlord could even comprehend. He crossed the space between himself and the first soldier in a single, fluid step. A twist, sharp, controlled, and the soldier's arm dropped uselessly at his side. A sweep of Aric's leg folded another to the floor. Not killing. Just disabling. Efficiently. It was horrifying precisely because it was merciful. Drak roared, charging forward with a blade as long as my torso. The metal was forged from Vanek steel, strong enough to cut through a hover hauler. But Aric caught the blade with both hands before it reached his throat. He caught it. Not deflected. Not blocked. Stopped. The Warlord's eyes bulged. That's impossible. Aric turned the blade aside gently, almost politely. It should have been impossible, he said. Not to protect her. I checked the girl again. Her breathing was shallow, trembling. She needed evacuation now, but the walkway was sealed by soldiers and panicked civilians. I tried to lift her, but she winced and clutched my wrist, shaking her head. Daddy will get me, she breathed. I didn't know how she knew that. But she did. With a sound like thunder cracking open the floor, Drak lunged at Aric again. Aric slid beneath him, rose behind him, and pressed 2 fingers to the Warlord's spine. Drak collapsed. Not dead. Not conscious. Just defeated. The marketplace inhaled collectively. Aric didn't celebrate. Didn't even look at the fallen Warlord. He simply lifted his daughter from my arms with a gentleness that contradicted everything I had just seen. Hold on, he whispered to her. She nodded, her cheek pressing against his shoulder. He turned to the humans. Secure the hall. They didn't argue. Didn't ask. They moved. Within minutes, the walkway was clear of civilians, Kothai forces pushed back, security drones neutered. The lights flickered again, then stabilized. Someone had taken over the station's grid. Someone human. Aric carried his daughter through the open archway leading to the council chamber, the humans forming a protective ring around them. I followed, because something told me leaving them now would mean missing a truth the galaxy had hidden for too long. Inside the chamber, the counselors were already gathering. Officials in elaborate robes. Advisors clutching tablets. Translators. Guards. All of them muttering about the alarms, about the blocked corridors, about the still unfolding chaos. Then they saw Aric. And the room fell silent. Drak elite bodyguards stepped forward, 8 towering Kothai, scarred veterans. They raised their weapons. Aric didn't slow. She's injured, he said, his voice still calm. She requires medical care. One guard snarled, aiming his rifle. No human orders us. He didn't finish his sentence. A blur of motion. A thud. 2 guards on the floor. Another weapon skittering across the polished stone. The chamber erupted. Counselors scrambled. Guards drew blades. Alarms shrieked. But through it all, Aric kept walking, his daughter's fingers curled weakly into the fabric of his shirt. The senior counselor, an ancient Selvaran whose face was etched like cracked marble, raised a trembling hand. Human, what have you done? Aric didn't answer. But someone behind him did. A human woman. Tall. Dark hair pulled back. Her uniform bore no insignia, but her presence filled the chamber like gravity. "Your warlord authorized force against a human miner," she said, her voice razor steady. "Protocol requires formal retribution." There was no threat in her tone. Only a statement. A rule. A law older than any written in the chamber. The Zelvaran swallowed. Retribution, carried out by whom? Aric stopped in the center of the chamber. He knelt, setting his daughter gently onto a padded bench I hadn't even noticed. Another human woman, a medic, immediately checked her vitals. Then Aric rose. "By the parent," the woman replied behind him. And that's when the soldiers dragged in the warlord's struggling form. He had regained consciousness. Barely. Mandibles twitching. Eyes glassy. "No," Drock rasped. "No, this is illegal, this is—" Aric reached him. And the warlord understood. He understood far too late. I will not describe the precise method. Not because it was gruesome, surprisingly it wasn't. Aric didn't torture him. Didn't prolong it. It was swift. Clean. Cold. The kind of ending that comes not from hatred but from certainty. When it was done, Aric lifted the warlord's head by the base of the crest plates. The chamber recoiled as one. Even I took a step back. Aric hung the head on the central display hook, a ceremonial mount used only for presenting diplomatic seals and peace tokens. Silence swallowed the chamber. His daughter whimpered softly. Aric was beside her instantly. "I'm here," he murmured. "You're safe." The humans stood like sentinels around them. Unmoving. Absolute. The Zelvaran counselor sank into his seat. Does this mean war with your species?" Aric didn't look up from his daughter. "No," he said. "It means you will protect children. All children. Ours. Yours. Everyone's." The room exhaled shakily. A Kothai guard, trembling, whispered, "What happens if someone forgets this rule?" Aric kissed his daughter's forehead before answering. "Then I come back. Reversal. Spike. Final anchor." The council issued their verdict within the hour. They called the killing justified defense. They issued an order prohibiting any force against minors in any jurisdiction under council oversight. And they entered a new clause into the emergency statutes. Human Clause 7.4. If a human child is harmed, the parent's response cannot be prosecuted by any council authority. I left the chamber long after the humans had gone, long after the crowd dispersed, long after the head was removed and the blood polished from the stones. But the silence that clung to the chamber followed me out. A silence the galaxy would remember. A silence that whispered one warning, clear as a blade against glass. Never strike a human child.